Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm here today with Rachel O'Connor over in London, England. Rachel is here to tell us a bit about her journey with living with chronic illness going all the way back to childhood. She's been diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, or ME, and fibromyalgia, and a whole host of other things. It's been a long and challenging journey, but thankfully she has made incredible progress and has fully got her life back. So Rachel, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Raelan. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I know you've had such a long journey with this and just learned so much from it. So I'm really excited to hear all about that. And people watching, stick around to the end because she's really going to walk you through exactly what it was that really finally kind of pulled this whole healing puzzle together for her.
And it was quite a puzzle.
Isn't it always? I've yet to interview one person to be like, yeah, I got really sick, but then just, first try.
Yeah, and I think that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah, we wouldn't need these interviews if that was the case. It's just a lot of different things to pull together.
I started feeling that I had fatigue from about my early 20s when I went to university, which I think is that sort of time that a lot of people get fatigue, from what I understand. Quite a bit of pressure during that time, but it was the late 80s, early 90s, so I didn't even know that chronic fatigue actually existed. Brushed myself off, went on with my life, lots of health problems in my 30s, and it was when I hit my 40s and actually on my honeymoon, it's a great time that I started to really get the fatigue. And I think what precipitated that was a lot of stress, but I'd also had my amalgam fillings drilled and refilled, and that was when the fatigue really started to take over. I had fatigue before, but it wasn't as bad. Tried working for a couple of years, went part-time. I had quite a high-profile job, and then the fatigue and pain, lots of pain for about 20 years, and then it just took over and I had to stop work. So that was kind of my story in a nutshell. Very, very quick overview without boring anyone about the painful details, but yeah.
Yeah, we could spend probably all week here just kind of unpacking all of that. 20 years, I can't even imagine all that you've been through.
I'd say there was some, particular points that things got a lot worse, and I would say that one of them was when I got the amalgam fillings drilled out, but then when I actually went to a holistic dentist to remove vapor from my teeth that they told me I had, they screwed up all of the dentistry. And that's when my fatigue, I was already not working and stuck at home, but once that happened and my teeth started to get completely messed up, that's when my health really went downhill, because I spent 2 years in a cycle of quite invasive dentistry, abscesses, getting teeth pulled. I'd get better, I'd have to go through another quite invasive dental procedure, and I was stuck for 2 years really in this loop of, well, it felt like I was descending into hell basically. But I would say that's probably the biggest part of the whole journey, really, when things really went down the toilet.
Did you start addressing the amalgam fillings and getting them removed and doing all of this to try and address your fatigue?
No, I was getting married and I wanted to look nice.
I love the honesty.
And the thing was, I was already spending a lot of money on my health at that point because I had digestive issues. I had the chronic pain at that point, and it was only until I was 40 that I got diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. If anyone out there watching this, if you got Ehlers-Danlos, you'll know we're considered the hypochondriacs of the chronic illness world. Something's failing all over the place.
I wanted to ask about the fillings because I don't know if this is still the case now, but when I first got sick, one of the things that I read about a lot was make sure you don't have these amalgam fillings because this could be the reason that you're sick, and then you need to go and it's very expensive and get them taken out. But then you'd also read, but getting them out can cause all these problems as well. So it was such a dilemma. I thankfully, I didn't even know. I'm like, do I have them? Would I know? I guess if you have them, I just missed the cutoff from when they were doing that. But yeah, people are like, what do I do? It's expensive. It could make me worse. So it's a tough call, I think, for a lot of people. I'm not sure if that's something that's still being kind of suggested for others, but it's just good to know one instance of, yes, it can be quite the journey taking them out. So it's not necessarily a quick fix or even the right fix?
I would say, if someone's watching this and they're thinking, oh, maybe it's my amalgam fillings, just hold off a bit. Don't touch them. They told me about going to a holistic dentist, but I was pretty cavalier at that point. And I was already spending a fortune on the other health conditions anyway, so I kind of thought, I'll just get these taken out. It was a really big mistake. That's, I would say, the biggest regret. I had to really forgive myself for that one.
So eventually you did start to turn things around. So what was the turning point for you, or how did you start to find things that helped you finally start to get better?
I actually think that I found lots of things that could have got me better, but the biggest stumbling block was me, because I'd been through all that trauma, and I'd ended up with dental trauma issues as well, and phobias and all sorts of stuff. I really was quite traumatized. My emotions were the problem, if you see what I mean. I got stuck in lots of really heavy emotions. So I was kind of sabotaging, because it became a mind-body thing. I had dysregulation of my nervous system. I'd become very stressed, and I'd stayed stressed. So lots of anger, lots of sadness, lots of desperation, frustration. I was in that space every day, and I honestly don't think anything that I put in my mouth or anything I juiced would have made a huge amount of difference until I addressed that. Lots of different protocols would have helped me. In fact, at certain points things improved, but the biggest issue I had was that I was a very stressed individual. A lot of stuff from childhood, lots of childhood trauma.
When you're in that, it can be hard to even recognize that you're stuck in that, because it becomes normal. Like looking back, you're like, wow, my anxiety was up to here, my stress was up to here, I was really depressed. And we might know in the moment that maybe we're not, running at our highest, peak performance, whatever, but so how did you realize that that was the issue, and how did you break yourself out of it?
Yeah, so that's interesting. So I was going to a functional medicine doctor who would see little bits of improvement, and then it would go bad again. And it got to a point where I think I'd spent about £8,000 on dentistry by this point and cleared all of the funds out. So I didn't have huge amounts of cash to stay on with her. She was on Harley Street. It was like 400 quid a visit or something. She said, while you're in this state, this stress state, she said, nothing I can do is going to help. Go and get all the dentistry sorted out and get calm, and then, come back. That was the turning point for me. I thought, right, I didn't quite believe her. I thought to myself, actually, the reason I'm stressed is because I'm sick, and I've been sick all this time. And you don't know what I've been through, all the colonoscopies and all these horrible, degrading tests and all sorts of things. But I had eventually an epiphany, and I realized, actually, I've got to do something about this. An uncle died, very close uncle, and I got into the pit of despair. I considered not being on this planet any longer, and that was when I had to have a word with myself and say, okay, Rachel, now's the time. You're either going to sink or you're going to swim. So I decided I was open to anything, and that's when I started to really look deep and get some help. And a friend of mine suggested medical medium, so I thought, right, I'm open to anything now, whereas before I was very closed and I was looking for someone else to help me and to save me. And I thought, right, I'm going to go solo. I'm going to try this. I got someone helping me with the emotional stuff, dealing with the childhood trauma, so I wasn't stressed, because I'd been stressed my whole life. No surprise, my mother had chronic fatigue. Things started to change, but there is a little twist, which I guess we'll get to. There's always a twist.
Oh my goodness. Okay, what's the twist?
I was getting well and things were coming together. I was feeling lighter. The anxiety was gone. The health, I was getting more energy back. And I was thinking to myself, this is it. Life is coming back. Thank you. Thank you. And then I started to get these headaches and this pressure in my head. I thought my head was going to explode, and I started getting dizzy at night, and then the energy just flatlined again. Well, as it turned out, the dentistry had completely done a number on my jaw. So I ended up with really bad TMJ because I've been eating on one side of my face, because one of the teeth it had a big hole in it and they couldn't fill it. So it was like, okay, well, I'll just eat on this side. Completely changed the symmetry in my face. And because of Ehlers-Danlos loss, I'd already had TMJ damage. So yeah, it had done an absolute number, and I think I'll put a photo in the folder to share with you, which you can show.
We'll put that up now.
So everything had got tight, and it felt like my brain was in a vice. It took me a year to find out what the hell was wrong. I went from dentist to dentist, maxillofacial, ENTs. I went to all of them until, maxillofacial said, oh, actually, it's your jaw. We did an MRI. There was going to be an operation. So things were getting really perilous at this point. I had a tooth which was sideways that they found. You name it, there was all sorts of things. I thought I was going mad. It was at that point I kind of thought, right, this is it. All that hard work, I'm not going to get better. So I fell back into the pit again, the pit of despair. But thankfully, because I'd gone through it before, I was able to have a word with myself, and I got myself out of it using all the things, the tools that I'd learned. I managed to avoid the operation, and I haven't had it back, and I got my energy back. And it's like, you always imagine the clouds part and there's like a beam of light and everyone's, oh, yeah, it was like that. It felt really hard won.
I love that you share that, because for so many of us, virtually all of us, I think we realize that this whole journey doesn't go linear, and there are backslides and there are crashes, and it can be so soul crushing in those moments. You're like, how am I back here? How am I back here? Like, I put in my time, I'm past this. I learned the lessons, I'm back at square one, and it's just like, I feel like giving up. Like, I don't have it in me to do this again. But then, hopefully after you take your time to feel those emotions, because they're real and you need to let them out, but then you realize, I'm not back at square one. Square one, I knew next to nothing. Like, I have all these tools now. I've done it before. I know I have this confidence in my ability to make this better.
If I'm stressed, it doesn't matter what I take, what I do. I can sit in the sauna every day. It's not going to make a blind bit of difference. Because my body's not going to heal if I'm stressed. Yeah. Honestly, I've had probably the worst year of my life this year, and yet I haven't got chronic fatigue. And that tells me that I've learned so much and that I have the tools now. These are tools for life,
I wish I could go back in time to when I first got sick in those first 2 years, where I spent all this money and I was doing all these things, and just have someone say to me, at least I believe this to be true, and so many other people are having this experience, like, save your money on the organic food. It's not making a difference right now. Save your energy. Quit making the celery juice. It's not helping you. Like, the dry skin brushing, the time in the sauna, all of the stuff that you're doing, like, your starting place is up here. Like, it's getting your head and getting that stress down and getting yourself in a good, calm, relaxed state, and building those tools so you can keep yourself there as much as possible on a moment by moment basis during the day. You're not forever going to be there. We can't just be calm and zen all the time. But once you have some tools to, in those moments, deal with it and bring yourself back down, it's so important. Oh my God, literally 100 pills of supplements I was popping into my mouth every day, wondering why they weren't doing anything, while I'm so stressed and crying myself to sleep.
Yeah, well, exactly. And you're stressed about, 500 quid a month I was spending at one point on my supplements, and I'm stressed out of my mind because I'm having to, spend 500 quid a month on those supplements. And if I don't, I'm not going to heal. And yet that was like just sabotaging everything. I could have done nothing for that time, and I probably would have felt better than I had. It's the foundation. It is the absolute foundation. The more people that talk about it, the more the message gets out there. It's like my biggest passion is, guys, it's not in your mind. You're not imagining your chronic fatigue, but the way that we feel and our stress levels, that has a huge impact on how we move out of this situation.
So for you, was it a matter of getting a hold of all of this and then your body started to recover, or was it managing this piece and then there are some other things, some other pieces to this puzzle for you for recovery?
That was pretty much it. I mean, I was lousy at pacing. I've always been lousy at doing. I couldn't even wrap my head around it. I'm like awake or I'm asleep. So it was just like, yeah, no, tell someone, who cares. I haven't even got the patience for that. Yeah, it was very much. I mean, I had to work through a lot of trauma from childhood because I was in fight and flight my whole life. My parents divorced when I was a kid. We'd been moved schools. I went to 5 schools in 3 months after my parents divorced, very young, lots of responsibility, being the oldest, volatile, shift working father that I lived with. It was such a great foundation, really. And I mean, they talk a lot about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences and chronic illness. Frustrates me sometimes that people go around the houses and doctors never talk to them about this stuff because it was such a big deal for me. So yeah, that learning to be calm in the day-to-day and how to sort of self-soothe, doing a lot of work on the whole trauma of illness, is that whole experience of the tests, being told that there's nothing wrong with you, being made to feel like a hypochondriac, the issues with, I had to do a lot of work on relationships and how I felt about my family because I had so much rage about that. I was like some poisonous little troll at home, exploding with rage. And the thing was, it was really like stealing my energy. The dental trauma, I ended up with a phobia of the dentist while I was going through more dental work. Anger with that doctor, the dentist and everyone else that I felt like had screwed me over along the way. But also we get angry with ourselves, Why did I go to that person and let them do that to me? Why didn't I stand up for myself? What's wrong with you getting yourself sick in the first place? Talk about beat yourself up. But that was pretty much, I had to deal with all that. I was not in a good place. And medical medium was great because it was a very simple framework to follow for me. I knew exactly what to eat. I've got a fly buzzing around my face. I knew exactly what to eat, when to eat it, not huge amounts of supplements. I quite like the tinctures. They were quite helpful. I did get into a bit of a perfectionist streak with it, and I had to get myself out of it. And that's another thing that I think a lot of us get into, is that we've got to do everything perfectly, otherwise we won't heal. So there's a lot of fear. Just relax, take your foot off the accelerator. You don't have to do everything. And that was another thing. I cut down on the things I did because I was the person that if I was going to do coffee enemas, I was doing them every day. I was having saunas every day. I was trying to meditate even though I was crap at it. It just fed into it, and that was more pressure, more stress, and also more ways of beating myself up.
I'm curious too, because you've clearly done a lot of work on, managing your stress and trauma and all of that. So what are, 1 or 2 helpful things that you do on a daily or weekly basis to stay on top of this?
So I work with somebody, another mind-body person. My tool of choice is EFT. I absolutely love it. So I do EFT, tap and breathe every day.
What is EFT for people who aren't aware?
Emotional freedom techniques. It's an interesting one because everyone thinks they know EFT, but there's the EFT meditations. They're great, but actually you can go a lot deeper with it, and it can be used like EMDR and some of these other mind-body techniques. Obviously, a practitioner needs to do that. It is fantastic. It's been scientifically proven to deal with anxiety and stress issues, calm the nervous system. It lowers cortisol, which is, what we want as a tool, and using it, and obviously I'm trained in it, it's the best thing that I find to keep me calm. I've also been getting into a lot of somatic experience techniques, you know, self-soothing techniques, and a few sort of like, you know, vagus nerve exercises. But EFT for me is the best because you can do it low key. Like, to get through all the dentistry, I just tapped while I was in the dentist chair, did finger tapping, and that got me through it, because without it I was, you know, absolutely terrified after everything I'd been through. So yeah, that's my number one tool. I use it every day. I would say if you want to find something just to get yourself started, do EFT, tap and breathe. It's really powerful, and after a month of doing that, you'll start to, at least, it's more of a emotional triage rather than getting to the source, but it'll at least start to calm you so that you can get a bit of, I think what happens when we get ourselves in such a state, and, you know, no judgment, geez, I really wear the badge on that one, we lose complete clarity of thoughts, but we also get into a real desperation space, and that means that we fall prey to all sorts of crazy treatments, and everything we do comes from that desperation and fear, and that just ups the stress levels. So anything you can do to get out of that space and start to give yourself a bit of space to breathe.
So as you've mentioned, you now work with other people who do this, but you didn't always. Like, you had a very lucrative career that had nothing to do with any of this.
Yep.
So what kind of work are you doing now, and what made you decide to switch?
So what I do now is I help people process trauma, but my main focus is really the trauma of illness, because I think it's not spoken about enough. It's kind of, everyone thinks, well, you'll get better and it's over. I've got a lot of stresses because there's a lot of trauma from being sick, and we get into these beliefs. The beliefs are based on our experiences. They don't just emerge from their own, you know, they don't grow. They need watering, and that usually comes from bad experiences with doctors, no one supporting you, feeling unheard, not validated. And what I find is people turn up to me with a lot of anger. That can give them a lot of pain. I worked with someone who most of their pain was being generated by the anger they felt about the way they'd been treated. So that's what I do. I call myself an emotional stress coach, and my focus is really looking at the sources, the emotional stresses that are really adding to the illness, that are keeping the illness alive, that are stopping people from getting out of fight and flight, that are, you know, dysregulating the nervous system. That's what I'll look at.
Such important work. I'm so glad you're out there doing it. I suspect almost everyone on the planet could probably benefit from that.
We all could, yeah.
But, you know, you and I were talking a little bit before we hit record. Actually, we were talking for a long time before we hit record. And I'm like, we need to talk about some of this in the video. It was sort of like a therapy session for each other. But just, you know, it's amazing how we love doing work where we're, you know, supporting other people and, you know, hopefully making a difference and hopefully bringing people together. But it's not easy. And understandably, I get comments from people sometimes like, how come everyone on your channel is selling something, or everyone out there is just trying to get rich from all of us sick people? And I get how it can look that way. And of course, the people who are most likely to come on a YouTube channel are the ones who are now doing something like this for a living, right? Not everybody just sitting at home living their life wants to put themselves out there on the internet. It's quite a vulnerable place to be. And,
yes.
You know, so it's scary. Almost everyone I talk to at the beginning of the interview is terrified. People who don't normally do this. Yeah. So I get it, but I also get how it looks like, oh my goodness, quit putting all these people at us that are selling stuff. But I think just to share a bit of like, most of us doing this work are making next to no money. And it's a lot of work and it's a lot of stress. You know, so why do you do it? Despite, because you said you could easily go back into a 6-figure career. You were in tech, you have very employable skills. So what makes you do this now? What
makes me do this is the fact that I know what it's like to be there, and I feel so much empathy for people in that same place. And is very, I also believe that when you go through hardship and something bad like that, the thing that kept me going was thinking that I could make something good out of it, that I could help other people and help them get through it too. I was at the sort of zenith of my career when I left tech. I could have easily gone back into that and be making a shed load of money, but nothing makes me happier than, you know, having someone tell me that they feel completely different to what they did 6 weeks ago. They're sleeping better. They don't have as much pain in their jaw anymore, or perhaps they've got their energy back. Who wouldn't want to have a job that enables you to do that? And I would challenge anyone, you know, there's lots of people, they get better and that's not what gets them out of bed, but there are some people that do, and the ones that do, they do it because they really care. You know, if I could do it for nothing, I would. Trust me. I would still do it, you know.
I know, and we do need to get away from this idea that people that are in helping professions need to be doing it for free, or, you know, like they shouldn't be able to support themselves. Like, we all have bills to pay, we all have mortgages, and we all have, you know, the same desire and drive to be, you know, financially comfortable. And also, you know, like you and I talked about before, once you've come through these illnesses, you're usually coming out of it financially in a bad place. So you really can't afford to just be fully just doing everything for free.
No, and actually there's something you said then. If I had the opportunity when I was dealing with CFS and the other conditions to work with someone who'd been through it, I mean, the people that come to me say, it's so much different working with you because you've been through it, you see me, you know exactly what I'm going through. So I think that, you know, that's really powerful, and that can be healing in and of itself, because actually the reason why it's great that there are people who've been through it who are now helping other people is that you do, when you work with people like that, you feel totally heard. You feel completely heard and seen. They know exactly what you've been through. And that is far more powerful than working with someone who's never been through it before. It's something really different.
And I used to see a lot of this because I used to be a social worker, and you see this all over the place. And I think it's that thing when you've been through hell and then you find your way out of it, and then you look and there are still people in hell. You're like, I have to do what I can. And I used to see it, whether it was people in addictions or people who are experiencing homelessness or people who were involved, sex workers or whatever it is. And then they manage to get themselves to a better place. Then they then want to spend their lives, you know, helping other people that are in that. Also making it feel, like you said, like it all wasn't for nothing, like some good come out of this. And I think we also come out of this with a new focus. Like, it shifts, like what we wanted before isn't what we want now. Like, I have a new passion. That other thing doesn't interest me anymore. Whatever that office job is, don't tell my boss, really not exciting to me. Like, I just have to drag my butt into those meetings, but you know, this I love. So and I know most of you watching get it. And I get, for those of you that struggle with it, it's understandable. But I've yet to meet anyone who's getting rich off of this, or who's came into this from a financially motivated place, thinking that this is the space to make money. It's not for there's all sorts of people out there, so I can't speak for everyone on the planet, but the vast majority, it's really not that.
Well, particularly in this type of space, because the place I work at, I'm the end of the road type of person. I'm after everyone's been to nutritionists, functional medicine doctors, some guy who waves a crystal over their head, you know. So when you're at the end of the road, you're getting people that have been through everything, so they're quite suspicious as well.
Yeah, which is understandable.
I completely get it. I mean, if someone says to me, look, I don't know what you're going to do. I mean, often I get people come to me and it's like, so what do you expect from me? Nothing. You just told me that you got better, and I kind of thought maybe you knew something. And it's kind of like, well, okay, so your expectations aren't that high. And I totally get it, because mine weren't either towards the end. It was like, yeah, okay, I'll try this because I've run out of options. But actually, people should be making their mental health and their emotional health their number one priority when it comes to approaching their recovery. Because generally, if it hasn't caused it, it's contributed to it. And it's not our fault. It's all unconscious. And I think probably the key takeaway for me out of the whole thing is I had to come to a point that I stopped looking for other people to save me. And when you come to that point, then you make much better choices, I think. Well, I certainly did.
I have a bit of a mixed view on this, because when I recovered, it is when I gave up on everybody and everything else. I was done spending money. I was done seeing doctors. I was done reading books. The world had nothing for me. Like, you guys had nothing for me. I tried. Like, I did it all. And I'm going to have to do this on my own, which can be really powerful. And I did do it on my own. And all in all, it took me 1.5 years, 2 years. But had I had some of these health coaches or some of these different things, I probably could have done it faster.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think it's walking that balance of taking ownership of it, but also being open to some help.
And that was that's where I was coming from. Because a coach, I mean, I call myself a coach because I always say to people, guys, I'm not here to save you. I'm going to give you some tools. I'm going to guide you. But ultimately, you're doing all the work. So at the end of it, when you've got your health back, you can take the credit for it. It's nothing to do with me. I'm just there to shine a light on the path so you can follow it. That was a big change for me, because I was going to people. It's like, okay, they've given me this food plan to do, these supplements. I'll do the saunas that they tell me to do. I'll do all the things they do. Whew. I don't have to read anything. I didn't even have to understand what it is I'm doing. I'm just going to do what they tell me. And that was that mindset change for me, was actually get myself educated. Because before I was just like fast fix central, Google, I call it the Google bunker, in there searching every day for the quick thing rather than learning.
Yeah, and I think understanding it is important, because you need the buy-in and you need to understand the mechanisms in it. Otherwise, you're not getting the full effect of it. You know, like when I recovered, I wrote a book about it, and I remember thinking, like, I could just give you this all in like one infographic that you could consume in about 2 minutes, and that would be the end of it. But it would, and not saying that my recovery way is for everybody, but it's going to be for nobody if I just give you that infographic. Like, you really have to understand what's behind it. Otherwise, but that's, most of us were like, we have limited energy, limited money. Like, just give me the steps, the checklist. I'll do those things. I don't know why I'm doing them. I'm stressed out while I'm doing them, but I'm doing it. I'm drinking my green juice. I'm going to the sauna. I'm doing all my stuff. I don't even know why I'm supposed to be doing these things, but someone said to do it. So,
and they're all great things. I mean,
saunas
are great.
Yes, not discounting these things. Green juice, all these things can be great.
I think the point, though, that you made is it's the energy you come to it. And I think that was the key thing for me. The energy that I came to my recovery, I had to change that energy. I had to change the mindset completely. And then when you get to that point where you just kind of think, okay, well, it's all going to happen in time, you start to relax. Because even the pressure, that's enough to keep you in that fight and flight state every day. That it's got to happen. I've got to, push. No, you don't need to work hard. And I think that was the thing I had to learn. I don't need to work hard for this to happen. I don't need to push. I need to just walk slowly towards it, towards the goal. Except that there's going to be some quite sizable rocks in the road.
Yes. But yes, that belief in what you're doing creates a sense of peace. The belief in what you're doing keeps the hope always there. And the belief in what you're doing comes from understanding why you're doing it. So when you look at kind of the nuts and bolts of things, you see what resonates and what doesn't. And you're like, oh, we do this because it does this. Oh, that makes sense. That fits with my own, what I'm seeing in my body or in my mind or my past history with trauma or whatever it is. So yeah.
Exactly, and it makes,
really great
makes sense. So you're not doing like I did those liver flushes with the olive oil and stuff like that.
Me too. Oh my goodness, we are old school. I don't hear about those anymore. Thank goodness. I
I'm
mean,
so
if they
glad
work for
they're
you,
over.
great, but oh, they're horrible. You drink oil and like laxatives and oh, it's just, and you, oh, it's just, you fast, it's just, oh.
It's about, honestly, I think I almost had an out-of-body experience. Am I
Oh.
going through the tunnel to the other side?
Oh my goodness. And then all this guilt over, are you doing them enough? Because they would say you should do one like every, I can't remember how often, but really like once every 10 years is trauma enough. Never mind how many times a year you're supposed to be doing it. The stuff we've been through. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But here we are and we can laugh about it, which
Yeah,
I also think is
absolutely.
pretty amazing.
And actually, humor is a big one. That's another thing. I mean, another thing that really helped me when I was miserable, like really so miserable. And I shouldn't laugh about it because it was real and it was, but I'm at peace with it. I forced myself to watch comedies every day. In fact, I watched all of Friends again in 3 months. Every day I would watch at least one or two Friends. And honestly, that made such a difference. And just getting, I started feeding squirrels and pigeons in my local park because, I mean, I live in a city and there's not much green around. That just made such a difference. Huge.
I'm laughing. It's not, I had this image in my mind while you're talking of someone splicing together recovery strategies from all my videos and someone going, feed pigeons. Someone else going like,
feed pigeons, they're great and they're crazy.
You get how people get a little bit skeptical watching these, like, oh, come on, like I have a real illness, quit wasting my time. But it's person after person after person is saying what you're saying.
No, it isn't a waste of time.
No.
Laughter has been scientifically proven to change, lots of hormones in the body. It changes the nervous system. Laughter is underrated. And I forced myself. My prescription was doing the emotional work, eating the fruits and vegetables, and laughing every single day. And the pigeons and squirrels helped with that. I would get through about 20 kilos of peanuts every couple of weeks. Be with some wild animals and even just squirrels and pigeons. They take you a lot. Honestly, they're so stoic, and the way they cope with their own trials and tribulations, for me, that was very fortifying to be around them. And they didn't judge me because I was very lonely at this point. And I mean, my husband and I weren't really on the best terms. So I had them, and they helped me come out of the real dark space. And yeah, people think it's trivial. You could bottle this, the impact of those sorts of things like laughter, forcing yourself to watch comedy and being with animals and listening to music. That if someone could bottle it and make money out of it, you'd be hearing about it, but they can't. So it's free. Do it.
So if someone wanted to learn more about the type of work that you do, or if they wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Come and see me over on my YouTube channel, Rachel O. And yeah, you can sort of see I'm very much a tough love type of person, but I talk all about the emotional side of chronic illness recovery because I don't think it's spoken about enough. So yeah, that's where people can check me out.
Awesome. And that, of course, will be in the video description. People watching, I really encourage you to check it out. She's got an incredible YouTube channel, a really amazing Instagram account. I'll just make sure all of that's there. And it's definitely worth a couple minutes of your time just to expand that and take a look at what's there. Thank you so much, Rachel. I could keep you here all day. I've really enjoyed this conversation, but I know all good things must come to an end, at least for now. Maybe I can have you back someday. That would be really wonderful on the channel.
Love it.
And thank you to all of you watching. I, as always, look forward to your comments and your thoughts in the video comments chat area. Let's keep the conversation going. Let us know what's working for you. And I always forget to let people know or remind people, if you're not already a part of it, I have a Facebook group that is for people who are recovering from ME, CFS, long COVID, and similar conditions. And it's got almost 6,000 people in it now. And what I think makes this space really nice, because I know we've got a zillion Facebook groups, and who needs another Facebook group? But we're very strict in this group about kind of who joins and the tone and the mindset that's there. So it needs to be optimistic. It needs to be recovery focused. You have to believe in recovery to be in this group. You know, we can share our struggles, but it has to be with the, you know, the intent of finding solutions and not venting in negativity. Because I really believe that we need fierce boundaries around our spaces, and we need to keep them positive and healthy, and this is what supports recovery. So that's linked in the video description. If you're not already a part of it, I'd love to have you come join us. And of course, check out all of Rachel's information in the video description as well. So thank you again, Rachel. Thank you to all of you watching. Big hugs to you. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got something out of this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.